People are now joining in. Hi, folks. Thank you so much for joining us on a Tuesday morning. I know it's festive time here in India and most parts of Asia. Really appreciate you guys doing this with us. Uh, do head to the chat and tell us which part of the world you are today. Logging in from. We would love to know that. To start with, I'm here in Jaipur. Chadeep, hello.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, which part of the world are you right now in?
Logging in from Bangalore.
Bangalore, the city of lakes. Superb. Uh, I can see a lot of people here already right now. Uh, Panelists and attendees, right? So, folks, feel free to put in your city and how you're doing today in the chat. Awesome. We should be starting in another 3 or 4 minutes at best. We have folks, people are still joining in right now. Tuesday mornings can be sluggish given the fact that winters have kicked in finally in India, right? So, of course, and the fact that today is Helsinki, Finland. Yes, I got the country right at least, right? Yeah. Right. Yeah. Today is election day in India. Parts of the country are are actually publishing results today. Right. So it will be a very busy day for publishers today in India for sure. Right. Let's see how many of these folks can actually come in today. Right? Irrespective, we should sort of target starting, let's say, in another 2 minutes from now. Jyoti, what do you say?
Sure.
Perfect. What I will do is I will share my screen with folks. And Jadip, give me a heads up if you can see my screen right now.
Yes, I can.
I'll over the control to you after that point, right? Okay. Hey folks, welcome aboard. We are now starting off. We're almost a minute from starting this webinar with Jagdeep Shetty, founder and CEO at Quintype. Uh, Appreciate you guys joining in today. Yes, we're now at 17 people, 15 people on the participant list, which is really cool. Hey Krishna, hey Jaswinder, hey Aditya, Mitali, Pravya. Thank you so much, guys, for hopping in. Uh, Shurdeep, yeah, I think we're all set, right? Probably what I can. Jaideep, in fact, if you don't mind, do you mind sharing your screen actually?
I'll do that.
Because you're the ones who has the slides. Yeah.
Let me know when you can see my screen.
You're good. You're
Okay.
good. 11:03. Let's take another minute and then kick it off. Right. By the way, folks, thank you so much for joining in once again. I'm Vivek Khanelwal, founder at iZooto. And today we have with us Chirdeep Shetty, CEO at Quintype. We have known Chirdeep and the Quintype team for a while now. We've been working closely with them as well. Chirdeep and I were actually recording a podcast last week, and that's when we were discussing that. Hey, all these publishers, especially in the media space, saw a massive uptick in traffic and page views when the pandemic first hit us in March 2020. Right. Having said that, not a lot of publishers have been able to sustain that growth. Right. The spike came in because of certain behavioral changes, but uh, to growth replicate growth levers is a very difficult process, right? Something that Jadeep and his team have had a ringside seat while they have helped their publishers, their customers across the globe increase their traffic, increase their engagement, increase their revenue, right? Which is exactly what Jadeep agreed today to sort of share with us and all of you folks. He will sort of share his observations and what, in his opinion, sort of works really well when you're trying to scale and grow a media business. Right, Chadeep. With that, I'll hand over the stage to you.
Thanks, Vivek. And good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining this webinar. We're looking at what are the options that publishers have to grow your traffic, right? And we at Quintype, we build technology platforms for publishers. We work very closely with a lot of news publishers, both large and small. News publishers, any different content verticals, travel, history, conservation, all of that. And we help publishers, one is grow the audience, increase engagement, make sure that they are able to monetize their content better. So this is in a nutshell what we do, and these are what we are trying to look at over the next 20 to 25 minutes through this webinar. Is what are factors that have worked well for publishers in helping them grow their traffic. This is our learning from over 80 publishers that we work very closely with. Um, and to start with, this is one of the publishers that we've been working very closely with since the beginning of this year. Publisher named Prabhat Kabar. They are a Hindi language publisher, and they publish a lot of news related to the North Indian segment, Bihar, Ranchi, all of these places. They have a lot of local news coverage that they do. In fact, today, election day, a big day for them as well, and we are definitely seeing a spike in traffic on their site at the moment. They moved on to a platform, I think, early February this year, just before the entire lockdown, just before the pandemic hit. And over the last 6 to 8 months, they've seen a six-fold increase in traffic. Initially, as you see the graph, we thought, okay, the lockdown effect, and it'll probably wane down, but that's not to be. They have done a lot of things, and these are things that we would want to talk about in this webinar, what's worked for them, as well as some of the other publishers, some of the experiments that other publishers have run to increase their traffic and sustain that traffic growth. That was the key. So, five main points that we want to cover today. The first one being focus on your tech stack. This is probably the most important point. If you ignore everything else and just focus on getting your tech stack right, that is something that would help you increase your traffic. Everybody understands content is king, and original content is what draws all of your audience. But without a right tech stack, you are being bogged down. You're not really hitting your potential of traffic. That's what we've seen. We'll talk about that in detail in the coming slides. Talk about page speed optimization, how Google is going to change its algorithm, ranking, all of that based on usability and engagement on your site. Um, Focus on accelerated mobile pages. Since 2016, since Google has launched accelerated mobile pages, there's been a lot of innovation on this front. And we've been running some experiments with some of our regional language publishers, and we want to talk about that as well, which has helped them increase both traffic and engagement on their site. And finally, focusing on the content strategy itself, both SEO strategies, what are the tips that we've seen work with some of the publishers, something very specific to regional language as well. And finally, the content strategy, what could work in terms of content itself, because I think over the last 1 year, we've seen a lot of publishers either increase their traffic significantly or see a huge drop. That was, I think, towards the end of last year, early this year, when Google changed its algorithm, and a lot of publishers saw a lot of loss in traffic owing to their content strategy. And this is something that we want to talk about as well. I am guessing this webinar would probably take about 20 to 25 minutes, this entire presentation, and we would keep the questions towards the end. So if you have any questions, do feel free to add it on chat, and we'll address that towards the end of the webinar. Before we get started, I want to talk about what are the sources of traffic that most publishers on our platform see. And this, we've checked with a lot of publishers across media, across languages, across geographies. It's more or less in the space. Of course, at the bottom on the x-axis, I've given you a range. None of this is absolutely right. So not direct traffic is not always 20%, right? It could range between 10 to 30, 40% sometimes. It depends on how big your brand is. If you are one of the biggest publishers in that region, for example, if you're an Indian Express or an NDTV in India, very likely that you'll be getting a lot of direct traffic, a lot of traffic coming directly on your site for IPL scores, for election results, budget, any of that, right? Or just latest news. These are loyal audience that's coming back to your platform regularly for news. But if you're a small publisher, if you are maybe just focused on one niche and you're trying to look at as much coverage as possible, it's very likely that you're getting traffic from side doors. You're not getting traffic from your homepage. You're getting traffic from search, maybe social channels. We see a lot of small publishers and startup publishers mainly getting a lot of traffic from social. Particularly regional publishers get significant amount of traffic from social. And when I say social, primarily Facebook. Facebook seems to be giving the lion's share of the referral from social networks onto publishers' site. Search continues to be one of the biggest sources of referral traffic to publishers. In case of any organic search, optimizing your keywords, all of that seems to be still working. And we see anywhere between a 5 to 40% of your traffic coming from search. That's what we've seen across our publishers. I've categorized um, others as everything else, which looks at other referral traffic, aggregator traffic, Apple News, Google News, Smart News, things around push notifications that could probably come through. All of them categorized together as others, and this also varies in that range, right? So, but primarily, what we also wanted to focus on is Google Discover. Over the last 1 year, we've seen Google Discover as an increasing source of traffic across our publishers. It used to be less than 2% last year. It started growing significantly, particularly in India and Southeast Asia, where there's a prevalence of Android phones. Google Discover seems to be having a lot of impact in sending traffic to publishers. We're seeing some of publishers who have optimized their traffic seem to be getting upwards of 15-20% from Google Discover. And with Google Discover supporting new formats like the visual stories, the latest AMP visual stories, if you continuously use Google Discover, you'll see a lot of content coming through visual stories, which are very engaging, right? And appealing to the millennials, appealing to the younger generation. That is something that we're seeing a lot of engagement on. Also, iZooto has a previous webinar with John Chehata from Condé Nast. It's a fantastic webinar on how you can optimize content for Google Discover. If you haven't watched it, I would highly recommend taking a look at it. It talks about what Condé Nast as a group has done and figured out various tricks to try and optimize your content for Google Discover. None of this is documented. Google just says it's completely based on the user's preferences, on their search, on their location, on the type of content they look at. But there are certain things around image sizes, all of that, that you should be able to do in terms of Google Discover to start getting some traffic there.
Just holding you on there for a second. So you mentioned Google Discover being a key contributor of traffic for publishers now, right? How do you look at Google News as a traffic source, especially for publishers in the news and media space? Do you think that's also, have you seen also a lot of traffic coming in from that specific channel as well?
We have seen a growing share from Google News as well. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head right now, but that's something we can get well. Basically, Google News is something that definitely sends traffic. We've seen Geo News sending a lot of traffic to regional publishers. This is something that's an upcoming platform that has started sending a lot of traffic, particularly to regional language publishers. They're getting a lot of traffic from Geo News, Daily Hunt. All of that has been in the Indian eco space. I don't know particularly in terms of Southeast Asia, but news aggregators wise, Google News, Geo News, Daily Hunt, these are probably the three largest share of news aggregators in India.
Right.
Yeah. Moving on. So let's go over it point by point. As I said, focusing on getting your tech stack right. The majority of publishers who moved on to Quintype over the last, say, 4 or 5 years, most of them have seen their traffic surge primarily on account of better tech. What we've been seeing is a lot of publishers grappling with technology in the past. They've been working with legacy systems. They've been working with certain plugins that just crash their system or don't scale at all. So these are the issues that most of the publishers face. And on the right, I've just shown you a simplistic diagram, an architecture diagram of what your entire digital publishing platform could be. This is more or less a modular structure. I'm not going to get into the details. But the idea is that you should be able to scale each layer independently. You should be able to scale your database layer independently, your services layer independently, your API layer independently, your front-end servers independently, and finally, deliver all of your content through the CDN. This is extremely important because you're close to your audience and you can start delivering content with a much lower latency. What we've seen most of our publishers as a pattern, and this is something that we've seen over the years, is that a lot of publishers don't really pay attention to the kind of errors they get on their existing systems. The 400 and 500 errors. It could be web pages, it could be assets, and maybe a JavaScript file that's not loading. Any of those that continuously start throwing errors, and these affect your search result ranking. These affect your page speed scores as well. Right, so something to definitely take a very keen look at is what kind of errors are you getting? Are you able to handle surges in traffic, something like an election result, something like, let's say, a terrorist attack or something like that, which is unpredictable and you get a surge in traffic. So what happens then? Are your servers able to handle that kind of traffic? If not, if you're getting 500 errors quite often, then that's something that Google will de-rank your site on. So these are things that you should be looking at on terms of technology. Caching aggressively, news media has the benefit of write once and read a million times. So you should be able to cache your stories as aggressively as possible and deliver your content extremely fast to most of your audience. And keep a very keen eye on your API response times. These are, in our view, and these are our learnings as well. Something that we've seen with our publishers is as the API response time starts increasing, that starts reducing your page speed on the front end as well. And certain things you need to, you won't know what's running. So let's say a background job runs on a Sunday night, right? Or a migration or an ETL script runs on a Sunday night on your database. Those start reducing your API response times. Those start locking the lower part of your tech stack, and that starts increasing your API response times, which becomes a problem for most publishers. So keep a very keen eye on it. We track our API response times extremely closely, and even a fluctuation by 2 or 3%, we get to know. We start realizing that something's wrong with our APIs, and we need to make sure that it's back on track. So these are main things around the tech stack. As long as you can get your tech stack right, I think if you have good content and a great tech stack, you're probably about 80-90% out there already in getting on the right track to get your to growing your traffic. The remaining around SEO, optimization, all of that will come through. But these are probably, content is king, and tech will be the catalyst in increasing your traffic. That's the way we see it. The second most important part that we would like to talk about is page speed optimization. I know all of the publishers on this webinar already have a clear understanding of page speed optimization, what you should be looking at, what Google has been doing with Core Web Vitals, with LCP, FID, and CLS, which stands for largest contentful paint, first input delay, and the cumulative layered shift, which affects your engagement, it affects your viewability and user experience on your site, right? And Google has made it public that sometime in 2021, your search engine rankings will be based on how optimized your pages are. So you, as publishers, you have probably a few months, a couple of months maybe, or a little more than a couple of months to optimize your pages, both to render really fast as well as provide the user fantastic experience. So while we talk about this, there are two caveats we want to point out here. We've seen publishers on both ends of the spectrum, a few publishers who just focus on content and don't really care about page speed as such, and that affects your traffic. On the flip side, we see publishers just focusing out and obsessing on the page speed only and trying to get it to the green zone. As you can see on the right side, I've just shown you one example of a page, which is probably showing you a red score of 28. And you would wonder, why is this person showing me a score of 28 when it looks pretty bad, right? So in most cases, if you have a plain vanilla site with just content, it's fairly easy to get that score into the green zone, into the 90s. But the moment you start adding monetization through ads, if you're looking at DFP, if you're looking at let's say Taboola ads, any of these ad networks, they start bringing down your page speed. So you will, it is a compromise. If you're looking at monetizing through ads, this is something that you will be hitting. Some of the largest publishers across the world, you can compare your page speed with them as well. They will be in the same range. They'll probably be about 15-20% here or there, because they will probably have teams continuously working on that. But that's pretty much the range that you will be in terms of ads. There are other innovative ways of probably doing this, maybe serving ads from your own server, But of course, you need to figure out how you can, what kind of a hit you will take on monetization in terms of paid speed, right? So that's something that as a publisher, you will need to figure out what lever you're willing to pull. The other thing around paid speed optimization, which we see as a common mistake across publishers, is most publishers try and optimize their paid speed for their homepage, right? And if you look at your Google Analytics, your homepage gets less than 10% of your traffic. Your story pages get over 85% of your traffic. So it's extremely important to focus on optimizing your story page templates rather than homepage. Yes, as a large publisher with a lot of direct traffic, with a lot of traffic on your homepage, it is important to optimize the homepage as well. But if you're getting a lot more traffic through side doors, we would highly recommend optimizing your traffic on the story pages first and then moving to the homepage. That's where we see biggest bang for the buck.
Right. Jyoti, I also have a question here for you. Uh, Google with Time has given us so many tools to measure, different metrics when it comes to page speed, right? Also, the way page speed was defined a few years back has changed completely now. Right? What used to be what used to be measured as how heavy your page is now is now getting changed to core web vitals, as you mentioned right now. Uh, what kind of tools should publishers be using to benchmark themselves? I remember there was Google Lighthouse. Then there are a few more tools which have been released specifically to measure the efficacy of of the PWAs which publishers have. Right. If you could also list down some of those tools, it will be really cool as well. Yeah.
Sure. Google Lighthouse is probably a best bet on the front end performance itself. That is something to take a look at. But as I said in the previous slide, front end performance also is impacted by how bad your API servers are. So those are things that you should probably have monitoring uh, on your logs itself and trying to figure out what your API response times have been. That Google Lighthouse or any other tool will not do. That's probably something that your DevOps team or TechOps team can set up to start monitoring API response times on your servers. The other tools that we've seen as well working, I think some of the publishers use GT metrics. There's also from Google, there's something called mobile friendly test. This is something to test your site about, is Google able to crawl the entire site? Is there too much JavaScript that Google is not able to read anything on your site at all? All of that as well. So as well as Google has AMP validators. So something to note is, and I'm going to talk about that in the very next slide. AMP validation pages. So make sure that your pages, especially accelerated mobile pages, are validated and set right without any errors. So those are things that we normally use. But for front-end page speed, we primarily rely on Lighthouse. That's in fact what we've got is we've integrated Lighthouse into our builds. So every build, we get to know that if there's a change, if there's, let's say, a new JavaScript that's added onto your page, we get to know that it started affecting your page speed. So as your editorial team, you get to know, if I add this widget, I see this much of a page speed decrease. Or if I remove this widget, it becomes an easier thing. Those are ones that I want to talk about in the text that I've added to the slide. I think most publishers, and especially large publishers, would be doing the right things around serving from CDN, minifying your assets, gzipping, compression, all of that. I think a lot of publishers are already doing that. If they're not doing that, that's something that will be first things that you need to get to. Where we've seen biggest bang for the buck again on page speed optimization is images. The biggest amount of bandwidth on your site is images. And trying to optimize those images is where we see a significant increase or boost in page speed optimization. Three things out there: right sizing the images, making sure the image size is not much larger than the viewport that it's being shown in. So there's no point in getting a 2000 pixel image on a 300 pixel phone, right? So trying to, and even if you're looking at a 350 image pixel on a 300 viewport, 300 pixel viewport, that also adds about 20% extra in terms of bandwidth, right? So that's something that you need to look at. How do you right size your images? Lazy loading your images, not loading everything, but only what's shown on the viewport. And finally, WebP. WebP is a new format that's not really a new format. It's been around for a while, but most publishers are moving towards WebP, and it gives you about a 30% compression, better compression than JPEG. So these are things that help optimize your pages, and there are a lot of image libraries that you can use to get these things right. You don't necessarily need to do everything by yourself. We've also seen a significant bump in traffic by reducing JS components, like JavaScript components on the page. A simple thing, for example, if you as a publisher use Carousel, use Carousel as a slider for images on your site, we've seen that impacts page speed significantly. Right? It looks pretty nice in terms of usability, but the amount of JavaScript that it loads and renders impacts your page speed. You're better off not using that regularly. Maybe in certain occasions, let's say there's a IPL match or there's something like a US elections that you need to show multiple images out there. Maybe it's worth using it selectively, but not on an everyday basis, because that definitely has an impact on your page speed. And it's not only that, even as simple as a JavaScript embed, which could be a tweet embed on your story page. That impacts. We did some analysis on that. That impacts your page speed by about a score of about 5 points. Just a single Twitter embed on your page, right? Of course, as a publisher, you'll be wondering, then should I just write text and not have images and stuff? It's a call, right? You need to take a conscious call about what are you looking at. Does the story really warrant 10 Twitter embeds in it? And if it impacts the page speed so much. So these are calls that you need to take as an editorial team. But from our learnings, these are the ones that have had maximum impact on page speed. And finally, the progressive web apps. These don't really impact your score that Google analyzes your page for, but it improves usability on the site. It improves the visual experience of what the user sees itself, because your shell is automatically loaded. The shell is cached on this user's phone itself. So it's or user's phone or desktop, and it's much easier, much faster for them to load only the content and not load the rest of your application. So these are our main experiments with page speed optimization so far that actually have helped publishers go significantly higher.
Right. Chetty, while the Lighthouse score, it's a great indicator of how good or bad are you doing, right? Is it okay? Do you think it's worth sort of obsessing about it compulsively and sort of saying, okay, I want to push my Lighthouse score from, let's say, a 60 to 65 to 70 to 75, and just keep on working this endlessly? Because it can be, it can be a rabbit hole journey at times, right? Where you just, where you can often hit a wall very quickly, given the fact that you have to sort of balance out your uh, your ad uh, your ad monetization scripts uh, and the page and the page speed as well. Right?
Right, and that's what I was trying to get to at the very beginning. It's what end of the spectrum you want to be, and how much are you willing to spend on that. Getting the page speed scores towards 100 is going to cost you a lot, because your entire engineering team is not going to be focused on anything else but get page speed done. And even a simple, as I said, a simple JavaScript widget added by your editorial team could cause the page speed to drop. Um, a simple test is you look at the same page without ads, and you will see that most of the pages will render in about 90 to 95 as a score. But ads will bring it down, and there are ways you can optimize that as well. There are definitely ways you can optimize that. But these are conscious calls that publishers need to take, because you will be spending a lot of time and effort and money on getting your page speed maybe about 10 or 15% higher. And the next change from, like, probably the next tech change on your from your tech team would probably bring it down by another 10%. So it's like a snake and ladder game that you keep playing. It's a never ending optimization in our opinion.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for that. Yeah. Really helpful.
The next one around the tech part of it is on AMP. This is where we've done a lot of experiments with our publishers, working very closely with them, and we've seen a significant increase in traffic through AMP. AMP was uh, released late 2015, early 2016, sometime back then, and a lot of publishers have been adopting AMP. I mean, initially they were reluctant, saying that, okay, this is going to be again a walled garden from Google, but it seems to be that a lot of traffic is actually coming in through AMP, and AMP accelerated mobile pages are extremely fast in loading your content. Most of our publishers, if you like to benchmark yourself, most of our large publishers, and there's a segment of publishers, get anywhere between 30 to 40% of their traffic from on AMP pages itself. Right, it varies again. Smaller publishers may get lesser. Larger publishers, some of the larger publishers get over 40% traffic on AMP. But this is something that you should be striving to get at least about 30% of your traffic on accelerated mobile pages. And this goes hand in hand with SEO. It goes hand in hand with what keywords you want to rank up on the site. And that's basically what we've seen works pretty well for a lot of publishers. So 2 experiments that we ran, the images on the left that you see. The very first one, we worked with a small regional publisher who was under 1 million page views at the beginning of the year. And what we built for them, and this is something that's available on the Quintype platform for all our publishers now, is you have the ability to have site-wide AMP, which we call an AMP first site, right? So if you toggle this feature, by default, all your traffic which comes on mobile will be served the AMP page instead of your actual page, instead of your responsive page. And this has helped significantly because your AMP pages, given that they are very restrictive in terms of the size of images and defining the images, the kind of ads, you can't use push down ads or interstitials and all of that start affecting your page speed. AMP pages are super fast, are extremely fast to be rendered on most screens. And we've seen just by toggling to AMP page, and this is a publisher that's even now continuing to serve all their mobile traffic on AMP, right? And they've seen their traffic grow about 3x, both in terms of absolute page views as well as engagement. Even the time on site, average session duration, all of that has gone up significantly after defaulting on to AMP pages itself rather than serving responsive web for most of the users. So this was one of the experiments we ran. Before I move on the other one, we are even seeing publishers push a little more on this and saying, why not make the entire site AMP itself? Why not make your homepage, section page, all your landing pages, author page, tag pages, all of them served as AMP, and AMP does support that right now. So these are also something that we're working with our publishers. I don't have data to share with you right now, but maybe sometime in the future we will share about entire site as AMP. So if your users are coming on mobile, they probably see a completely AMP-enabled site rather than your responsive web. The second one is a fairly mid-sized, large-sized publisher who's, again, a regional publisher that we work with. And one issue that most publishers had with AMP, at least earlier on this year, was while they see a lot of traffic in AMP, they got a lot of bounce rate, very, very high bounce rates in AMP, upwards of about 90% in terms of bounce rate in AMP. And the reason for that was there was no infinite scroll. I mean, it was a half-baked implementation of a hacky way of doing infinite scroll earlier in AMP. And since AMP has had this version earlier this year, and we've got a library, we've got an AMP library that we share with all of our publishers to start implementing infinite scroll, related stories, make sure the engagement is going much higher. We've seen just through implementation of infinite scroll and related stories, a 2x growth in AMP traffic itself and their overall traffic as well. So these are small experiments that we've been working with publishers to do. These are things that we've seen. So take away from this slide, do not shy away from AMP. I think it is here to stay, and it's going to bring you a lot more traffic, much faster to your audience as well. So figure out what you can do, what experiments you would want to run with AMP, and how you can deliver your content through AMP. And of course, a lot of new innovation coming on AMP, which is the visual stories. Even for sites which are entertainment heavy, which are pictures heavy, there are these Instagram story kind of style visual stories on AMP, which is again being featured on Google Discover these days. So those are the ones that we would encourage publishers to start trying. And that's where we see a lot more engagement as well. Finally, moving on to the actual content parts itself. A few things that we learned from our publishers is having a very clear information architecture. This is important while you look at a migration, whether you're migrating internally within the same systems or if you're trying to migrate to an external system. Revisiting your information architecture, structuring your content. For example, the location-specific strategy that you see on this video, what Prabhat Khabar has done, they have content per city, per district out there. right? So if you search for, let's say, Patna news or Ranchi news or Lucknow news, likely that one of these will show up out there. And that's, I think, the niche for regional language publishers. You will be able to have a lot more content which is local, and people will search for that. For example, if you just do a Bihar election result search right now on Google, unlikely you'll find any of the large regional publishers. You will probably see the national media, the NDTVs, the Indian Express, the Times of India, Network 18, all of these guys showing up on top on the search page. It's unlikely that you'll see regional publishers showing up out there for multiple reasons, right? For domain authority, for a whole bunch of reasons that you'll not be able to take those keywords. But location specific content, trying to get to Lucknow news, Banaras news kind of thing, that also gets a lot of traffic, and that's something that works really well for regional language publishers. Author pages, this is something that we've been working with a few publishers recently, trying to dedicate specific author pages, give the detailed bio of the author, their entire social handles, their Twitter handles, Facebook handles, all of that. Any notable achievements that they have had, awards, any notable articles that they've got appreciated for, even featuring their articles on their pages. If you can get to this point, if your CMS lets you do these particular things, this is also something that will help you establish a much better authority with Google trying to focus on EAT at this point, which is the expertise and authority and stuff. So this is something that will help you get much better in terms of your SEO search results. And finally, what we've looked at in some of one of our regional publishers, if you see the queue on the right, they use a mix of English summary for regional content. They still see a lot of search being done in English, while people want to read regional content as well. So they use a mix of both English as well as regional meta titles and meta descriptions, as well as the summary of the article. The entire article is in regional language, but the summary of the article will probably be in English to make sure that it's searchable on the net. So these are strategies that we've seen digital publishers, especially regional language publishers, adopt to start taking on a lot more of those keywords. Sorry, and finally, the content strategy itself. Sorry, Vivek, you had a question there?
I had a question there. You mentioned about EAT as a concept. If you could also explain a bit more that why author pages are actually so important, because we have never actually heard platforms stressing so strongly on creating author pages with their bio and social links and so on. Right? Why exactly is this so important for us?
So this is what Google starts optimizing for original content. That's actually one of my next slides. And one of, I mean, your authority, your expertise that you start showing, your original content that you start showing on your site. If there are notable authors who have written opinion columns, let's say you have some of the well-known authors who have written various opinion columns, and they're writing content on your platform as well, that's automatically starting to get ranked up, mainly based on their own expertise itself. Right. So that is something that you need to start leveraging. That's something that you need to describe. Who are your authors? It may not be full-time working with you. These could be columnists who are writing for you, but highlight their stories, highlight what are the notable achievements they have made. Let's say any of the awards that they have won, all of them needs to be at very clear indicated author page that Google can crawl and understand that you have some very notable author names, and that automatically ranks your content and your domain authority much higher.
Got it. Thanks. Yeah.
And the last slide on this one, the content strategy itself. I think you've heard this a million times already, focus on original content. This is even more paramount right now with whatever changes that Google is making towards its algorithm. There is no point in just taking a viral video and putting it as your content and running it. Google will prioritize who was the original creator of that video and start writing that. Even if it's an interview, let's say it's a great interview, and you just use that interview on your site just to see if you can get some traffic out of it, it's unlikely that you will get. So what would be a better option is if you want to work on that kind of content, a better option is to take that content and start looking at your opinion piece on that. It could be about your opinion about that interview. It could be your opinion about that viral video, right? Something around that which is not found anywhere else on the internet. put some content piece along with that rather than just taking somebody else's content and saying that, okay, we'll use that straight off. That used to work. It's no longer going to be working in the future. Content syndication. This is extremely important across all of our publishers. We've seen this earlier, I think late last year, early this year. Almost every publisher we worked with was syndicating from various wire services, the PTIs, the ANIs, Reuters, all of these guys, and auto publishing content on their web pages and mobile apps. The issue with something like that right now is Google starts seeing that you have a lot more content which is not changed at all, which is the same content available on across the web, right? So there's no reason for us to prioritize you, because then your amount of original content is much lower. So in case you're doing content syndication, yes, I'm not saying completely stop it, but be very selective about content syndication. And if you can, do not auto post whatever is available on the net elsewhere. You will need to work on that. You probably can do content syndication, but work on that. It could be changing or adding some more pieces to that, adding your own images to them. Some of that will help in terms of the content syndication strategy itself. And having said all of this, the final part that we've seen, everybody kept saying more content, more traffic, and looking at it with content syndication. But that's all changed. With content syndication, more content does not necessarily mean more traffic. But if you were to do all of this, and that's what we've seen with Prabhat Cover right now, if you were to get a good tech stack, focus on your AMP pages, page speed optimization, have your SEO strategy in place, Prabhat Cover has been consistently increasing the amount of content they've been producing. They were producing about 100 stories a day, moved to 150, look at 200, or probably a little more than that as well. And over a period of time, they're seeing a direct, their traffic increase in direct proportion with the amount of content that they're creating. Because it's not about just creating more traffic. More content. That's not going to increase your traffic. But if you can get the others in a row, if you can get the others issues fixed around your tech as well as SEO, then you can start adding more content, more original content, and it will lead to a lot more traffic. That's what we're seeing from our publishers.
Jaideep, I have an ethical question on the previous one. I'm not sure if you've seen the GPT-3 AI algorithm, which is now also spitting not only conversations but then content pieces and so on and so forth, right? Now, with such algorithms at play, right, content is sort of increasing. It will become increasingly commoditized, right? And then volume becomes a very easy game in that case to manipulate, right? What's your take on this? And how do you sort of see some of these capabilities impacting the publisher industry? Because their adoption is increasing on a day-by-day basis, right? And if you said that you saw a linear impact of number of stories onto the traffic impact, right? How do you, and I mean, with AI content, it's a matter of a click, right? One click and you have 1,000 stories published ready for yourself, right? What's your take here?
So, I mean, a lot of publishers are doing this. Bloomberg has a lot of content that's already produced by machines, and something that is data specific, right? If you're looking at market related data, okay, this stock went up on this particular news, you can look at correlation between very specific events, or let's say all the bank stocks tanked today and there was some news, you're trying to correlate that news. That can be actually created by a machine and creates it extremely well. In fact, it's hardly possible for us to actually say a human and machine apart in those cases. But there will be content pieces that a machine will not be able to generate. There will be investigative journalism that a machine will not be able to generate. I mean, we can question the ethics of it, whether how much you can generate the content, but I think those will stay. It's also, while Google understands this as well, that most people will be generating content, they will look at engagement on the site. There are already a lot of sites, if you look at, particularly on the financial markets side, this is where AI is being used a lot to generate content. But if the engagement on that content is very low, if I'm just getting the same thing that I've heard in some other news, I'll drop off on that site. So when you see the bounce rates going up, the engagement very low, then Google starts deranking those. So even you may have so much content generated, but it's actually working against you, right? So it's probably better off to start creating content that's a little more engaging. That's the way we see it. But I think AI-based content is going to be here to stay. In fact, GPT-3 is able to even create lyrics for a song, right? So you can have your personalized songs if you like, right? So we don't know the kind of world that we are going to be living in, but these are things here to stay, and we need to figure out a way around it. We just need to figure out a way to live with it.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. So key takeaways from this presentation, as I said, just going back to where we started, focus on your tech stack. That's the number one priority for all publishers. This is where if you don't do anything else, if you just focus, if you're having an issue with your tech today, if you're not able to scale your servers, if you're not seeing performance pages, if you're seeing too many of these 400, 500 errors in your logs or Google Search Console, that is the number one priority. Forget everything else, fix that first. If you're not able to fix that, you're not going to be increasing your traffic much, right? Once that is done, then start going down the chain. Core web vitals is your front end performance, your users experience. Start focusing on the web vitals out there, and then looking at increasing traffic through image optimization, through AMP. All of that is what you need to look at. AMP is a fantastic source of traffic. There's a lot to be learned there, a lot of experiments that we are currently doing with some of our publishers as well. So those are things to look at. And the regional language SEO, trying to focus on local content, trying to figure out if most of your traffic is going to be searching in English, looking at English keywords, English summaries, all of that as well. And finally, your content strategy itself. So that these are the most, these are probably in order of priority, what you, as a publisher, you should be focusing on. And I think you have a fair chance in increasing the traffic if these things are fixed. We've seen publishers, Prabhat Cover is one of the examples where we've seen like a 6-fold increase in traffic. We've seen publishers with over 10-fold increase in traffic as well. But those also start on a lower base. Those start with servers that's probably up only 12 hours a day. Right? They're just fighting with those servers every single day. So these are the issues that publishers face. As long as your tech can be handled pretty well and you can focus on original content, we see a lot of increase in terms of traffic.
Got it. Awesome. Sudeep, that was very helpful, very insightful. I do have a bunch of questions ready for you right now. If it's okay, we can just dive into them.
Sure.
Okay, so we had a question on GPT-3 already, which is what we have already answered right now. There is a question on evergreen content, right? Now, what should publishers do to grow evergreen content as a traffic magnet?
Yeah. Great question now there. Yes, evergreen content, you always have that long tail, people coming back for it multiple points of time, but there's enough literature on that as well. You should be able to update that evergreen traffic. Don't keep some article that's published in 2017 and just left it as it is, because that may not show up on various channels. You may be able to update some of those articles, recirculate some of those articles, promote some of those articles through other channels. And that's when it starts coming through things like Google Discover, your news, all of them as well. So make sure that if you're focusing on evergreen content, it stays updated. Don't write an article 5 years back and just assume that there'll be more content going there, because there are so many more publishers that are publishing content today, and Google will look at recency as well. So it's worth looking at what are the updates on some of these articles that we can provide.
Got it. Awesome. The next question is from Swaroop. Swaroop wants to know, how can we increase click-through rates, right? I'm assuming he's speaking in context of, let's say, search or social. So Sudeep, any insights from that?
Yes, I think the click-through rates previously were gamed quite a bit. People used to have a lot of keywords which are not even related to the content and all of that, just to try and get people onto your pages. But that's really not working. So you need to figure out, if you really want to focus on click-through rates, my suggestion is trying to narrow down the universe. Try and find a niche that you want to own and completely take ownership of. If you're trying to get much higher click-through rates for Narendra Modi, and you're not the biggest publisher in India, it's unlikely that you will get that. right? So you'll probably not even be on the very first page. So you're not going to even have those impressions. So figure out what are the keywords that you want to go after. It may be anything in your locality. It may be anything that's a vertical that you cover. For example, we have a conservation publisher as well. So certain projects that they do on conservation, snow leopard conservation, all of that, they start ranking up out there. That's a niche that they have taken that not many other publishers will be publishing. Even if, let's say, a large publisher like an Indian Express writes an article, they'll probably write one or two articles in it. Versus this publisher that we have has multiple articles and projects on top of that as well. So try and figure out a lot more content and narrow down your keyword focus. That's my suggestion for getting better CTRs.
Perfect. That's very helpful. The next question: is there an disadvantage in choosing WordPress versus Drupal versus Ghost, etc.? Okay, Krishna, this is a very well. It's a we could host a webinar on this question, right? But I'll let Jagdeep answer this in a short while. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think most CMSs have evolved over a period of time, and right now most of them are moving towards a modular structure. It's more about this kind of skills that you either have in-house or your partners have in-house that you can start working with. Drupal is extremely customizable, but will take a lot of work in trying to get that customized for your purpose. So if you have that long-term view, then yes, Drupal probably be something that you can look at. WordPress, fairly easy to get started, whole bunch of templates. But again, WordPress has this issue called plugin hell. Well, there are 50,000 plugins to do whatever you want in WordPress. They're not tested with each other. So sometimes these plugins just don't work with each other. They crash your systems. These are issues that you will need to deal with. So these are solutions that you need to look at. There are a whole bunch of other solutions as well, whether it is Ghost, Buffer, Contentful, Content Stack. We are also in the same space. Quintype. All of us are looking at building CMSs for media in particular.
Got it. I hope that was helpful, Krishna, for you. Uh, how should publishers who are heavy on video approach their challenges around page speed optimization? Uh, yeah.
So, I mean, in terms of video, few things that we have learned from publishers is don't just have video pages without any content, because Google crawls that as very little content on your page, right? You need to have some bit of description of that video. Even if you have an interview, for example, a video with the entire summary of the interview or the excerpt of the interview would help. These are when you have video pages, we would recommend take the time to describe those video pages, because Google is able to crawl those. Not everybody is searching only on YouTube. You're very likely to be searching on Google and then using the video tab to start looking at videos. So if you want to rank up out there, start putting in some content related to that video and not just a video player on that page saying that this is a video that I have.
Got it. Yeah, but Pradeep, also any specific nuances which publishers should be aware of when they are building these pages with videos, because videos are heavy in terms of their size, right? It does impact the page load time. Any specific tricks to sort of optimize for the page speed itself, apart from content?
So most of the video players right now are doing a pretty good job of that. Whether you use YouTube, Vimeo, Dailymotion, JW Player, some of them are better than the others. For example, YouTube seems to be extremely fast in whatever it's looking at, but so does like private players like Brightcow or anybody of these guys. They do a pretty good job in optimizing videos and basically transcoding it, making sure that the exact same size video is played on your device. All of that is automatically done by the video player.
Right.
Of course, the suggestion is not to go and reinvent the wheel. Do not build your own video player. I think that would be going down the dead trap, because there's so much innovation happening in video right now. It's just not worth going down that path.
Right. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I agree. Right. The build versus buy on this one is a very straightforward one. Just pick up a ready-to-use player and use it as it is. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. This has been very helpful. Do we have any more questions, folks? We do have 5 more minutes. Jardine has been very kind with his time. Feel free to type in your questions in chat, or as you can always ping Chirdeep on his email ID here displayed, right? And if there's anything else, feel free to reach out to us at iZooto or Chirdeep directly, and we'll be more than happy to answer your questions around how you can grow your traffic, right? We have none as of now. So Chadeep, once again, thank you so much for doing this with us. Right, this was very insightful. We had a power-packed Q&A, right? Yeah, super insightful, super interesting insights. I love what you sort of showed around the case studies around AMP. Right, they were very, very helpful. Strong indications, right? Yeah, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
All right, thanks. All right, folks. We obviously have recorded this. We will send you over the recording on an email. Thanks for being patient listeners for us. Right. See you again. Bye-bye.
Bye.